The frustration amongst the support staff was palpable. It was all that the General could do not to realize and justify it, to condone it, by expressing any reaction to their reinforcements. General Ibrahim merely raised an eyebrow and his hand, silencing the growing muttering, but it was hard, damnably hard, not to at least tut. In reality, he wanted to rage and spit and scream at the betrayal, but Ibrahim was not a general for nothing. His iron will and ability to size up a situation kicked in, without any requirement to summon these most treasured of his attributes. He would see what they had sent. The crusade had been 10 years in the building, amassing and provisioning, and had been 5 that they had been fighting across the systems. Hard fighting. Unpredictable. The battles had been growing in their intensity as they moved closer and closer to the capital world, the home world of the Palace of Light. One family, just one, had dominated 24 worlds. Before the crusade was called, they had escalated their domination with each passing decade. They had to be stopped. For they were psychers, witches, ones of prodigious might. Sanctioned psychers aplenty had been sent against them, any of them, but had always gone down to the dust. Their influence could not be permitted to grow. A call had gone out to the closest Black Templars crusade, but no response had been received, the message probably not having reached them. So a localized crusade was called. The Navy had been all too happy to help, considering the resources lost to the encroachments by the Scourge. Planet by planet, the Guard cleansed their influence, destroying their proxies across every world. Proxies. Indigenous psychers the family then controlled, because they could manipulate them from afar. They killed some. A female on one planet, a young male on another. 2 were gotten in one place. But each time it was grueling and costly. Now 5 years later, when the siege of the palace began, their main stronghold where at least 4 of these beings and their leader now lurked. If the general was honest, he had expected Astartes to thunder down on this impregnable fortress and kill everything within. But then, if the amassed fire that they had already used could not even dent the mystic shields that were erected, he supposed a drop pod strike would not be wise. The scything blasts of these witches, the white that scorched tanks and troops alike, would then fire out, decimating the armies around it in 1 minute. So they stood back, just outside of the range of the lightning from the skies, or the range that they had revealed so far. The general had expected more than this, though, whatever this was. A wing of fighters paid escort to one sole transport, and not a large one. The fighters were there just to see if anything came out of the palace, but it did not, of course. The witches huddled in their cave. The second the transport stopped, the back doors opened, and a single rhino came out at speed. There was stunned silence from the staff as the murmur of, "That's all we get," threatened to rise and rise. But the rhino, that ancient design of armored personnel carrier so well known, is a color that the general has seen once before in his entire life. Its sigils mark it out boldly to those few in the know. He took a deep breath and then allowed his comment to resound about the room. "That'll be enough. More than enough. Prepare a frontal assault to follow that rhino. Sections 4 through 9 prepare to advance at the double. Stay very close if you can." Comms officers swung around and started to frantically vox the instructions out to the field officers. The second-in-command now loitered next to the general, looming in that way that meant he wanted answers, but would never ask the questions. The general turned to him and smiled a wide, toothy grin, one he smiled very rarely. "Those freaks don't stand a chance now." Looking on in satisfaction as the rhino headed towards the palace gates, the general smiled again. Lines of lightning trailed across the sky and began to strike down. They had been seen for days now, catastrophic attacks that could only be likened to receiving orbital bombardment. But not this time. The power slams down, but as it gets closer to the Golden Rhino, it simply fizzled out. More and more strikes came down, but it fizzled again hundreds of meters from the Rhino. Then the skies began to calm. The Rhino crashes what was known to be interlocking fields of psychic force, never stopping or slowing. It then barrels straight up to the gates of the palace itself, going straight through them. The assault regiments are in hot pursuit. They gain some feed, showing just 5 women getting out of the Rhino. Their armor ornate, but functional. It seems there are no defenders of the palace. It was only ever the family, the witches, and perhaps psychic thought forms that they had created, which had now all been dissolved. The 5 walk up the stairs, to the doors, and then through them, totally unhindered, utterly immune to the powers of the warp. Within 10 minutes, they came out again, each with a head in a hand carried by the hair, and there they stood on the steps and held up the still bleeding trophies. The Palace of Light was no more. Welcome, gentle listeners. I'm Baldermort, and I wish to introduce you to the forces and factions of the Warhammer 40k universe. We glimpsed these things of horror, these silent crows, in the story at the beginning of my entry for the origins of the Emperor, so do give that a look if you wish to see how their captives may see them. So today, we are going to take a very brief look at the Sisters of Silence. These silent female warriors are horrors to behold, as they are viewed as having no soul. They unsettle all around them and disrupt the flow of the universe that only can be experienced by a psyker, for they are what are called nulls. I shall explain that term in more detail very soon in my planned entry on psykers and the metaphysics of the Warhammer 40k setting. But for the time being, let us lean on existing wisdom for the majority of this entry, for the 7th edition codex is still comparatively new as the time frame of Warhammer 40k can be viewed, so I feel no need to reinvent the wheel when it is put so well already. To quote, the Sisters of Silence, Null Maidens of Luna. Silent is the hand of the Emperor's justice. Solemn is the soul that hunts the magus and the sorcerer. No war cry comes from the throats of the Golden Throne's witch-seekers. No shouted commands direct the ebb and flow of their attack. Only the crack-boom of the holy bolter and the whooshing roar of flamers accompany their eternal hunt for those who would bring chaos to the Imperium. Like phantoms, they stride and slip through the mists of battle, feline in their grace and serpent-fast in the melee at Hunt's End. Though their weapons are potent, the wielders are most dangerous of all. Psykers quail in revulsion as they are struck down, for these women, soulless and strange, have auras that cause only pain and confusion in their prey. The mysterious Sisters of Silence are an all-female order utterly devoted to the Emperor. Of all the scions of the Imperium, only they and the Custodian Guard are permitted to walk freely in the Emperor's vaults. Those aware of their existence treat them with a mix of fear and awe, for the stories that surround them are sinister indeed. Also known as Null Maidens, the Sisters of Silence are witch hunters supreme. Each is psychically untouchable, immune to mental assault, and with no presence at all in the mirror dimension of the warp. To normal humans, these blanks are unsettling, even disturbing. To psykers, they are anathema, yawning voids that drain the soul as a black hole devours light. They are counted amongst the most blessed of the Emperor's servants, and given great respect, accordingly, by those whom they fight alongside. The Null Maidens, upon attaining full status as a member of their order, swear the oath of tranquility in the presence of the Emperor. They resolve to speak with deeds alone, the better to focus on their holy task. Many a heresy has been committed through the power of the word, for speech is the tool of the tempter and the demagogue. The Sisters of Silence instead communicate through a complex system of hand signals known as thought mark. It is their duty to hunt down and apprehend untrained or rogue psykers, for such individuals pose a greater threat to the Imperium than any megalomaniacal warlord. Those the Sisterhood deems too dangerous to exist, they put down with merciless efficiency. The Sisters' immunity to the horrors of psychic assault, a consequence of the pariah gene they carry within them, makes them a worthy match for even the mightiest warlock. Even the sorcerers of chaos find themselves reeling, body and soul, at the mere proximity of these esoteric warriors. Small wonder that the orders of the Sisterhood are counted as such powerful assets in mankind's eternal war. An ancient order. During the Great Crusade, the Emperor kept a standing battalion of the Silent Sisterhood within his personal armies. They were tasked with hunting and exterminating those who would use their psychic talent against the Imperium during the wars for compliance. Since that time, the remit of the Null Maidens has demanded that they wage near constant war. The Sisters of Silence are rare pearls in the limitless ocean of humanity. Each sister is one in a trillion, for the mental architecture of those who harbour the pariah gene is nothing like that of the common herd. They have only a startling void in the place of that emotive spiritual core that empowers and guides a typical human. No simple absence is this, but a hungry, sucking abyss that makes even the spiritually inert feel unsettled and nauseous. It is this anomaly that makes the Sisters the bane of warlocks and demons alike. The Emperor once referred to this quality as a rare gift within his most esoteric servants, but in many ways it is an alienating, inescapable affliction. Yet in a galaxy where the shadows of mankind's worst excesses are given physical form, it is indeed a precious resource. The sacrifice these pariahs make is profound, but without it, humanity may well have consumed itself long ago. Mankind's surety of purpose was restored by the tremendous success of the Great Crusade, was shaken to its core by the treachery of the War Master. The corruption horror spread throughout the Legionis Astartes eroded the imperial truth, the secular wisdom laid down by the Emperor, that saw the furtherance of logic and science outlaw the concept of supernatural entities. The Emperor knew of the powers that haunted humanity, and had long sought to starve them of influence by denying their existence altogether. Part of this strategy was the manipulation of the pariah gene, an extremely rare genetic anomaly that broke the link between the immaterium and the material universe. Even the presence of a single pariah is an ice-cold bucket over the flames of the soul, a suffocating chill that can turn a nigh omnipotent psyker into a weakling ripe for slaughter. It is not through fear of his boundless psychic talents that the Emperor waged his war of atheism, but through hope for a galaxy of order and reason. He resolutely denied his own godhood, even if it meant the most dire censure for his subjects. To openly admit there were psychic entities in the universe was to open a channel that the foolish and the greedy would seek to exploit. He was right to do so. As the Legionis Astartes began to fracture, the worship of Horus's new god saw many psychers treat with demonic forces, creatures coalesce from mankind's dark reflections within the Empyrean. Some did so unwittingly, and the resultant manifestations tore tiny holes in the fabric of real space, holes that the fiends lurking behind the veil would gladly rip wider. Others deliberately opened such gates, dooming entire worlds to demonic invasion. Perhaps the most infamous example of loyal psychers turning against the edicts of the Emperor was that of the Thousand Sons. The warrior mystic's home world died in flames after a punitive strike from the Space Wolves, the Custodian Guard, and the Silent Sisterhood, who, by their very presence, forced the Thousand Sons to stop their use of outlawed magic. Such was their zeal and focus during the Horus Heresy. The Sisters of Silence have been given unprecedented autonomy. They are trusted implicitly by the High Lords of Terror, for those deaf to the whispers of the warp are amongst the most reliable of agents. Theirs is the duty of monitoring the masses via a network of trusted agents within the Adeptus Astra Telepathica. They then hunt down any untrained or road psychers they find, often alongside the Inquisition and the infamous hunter squad of the Black Ships. There are few other roles members of the Sisterhood could fulfill, for their talent is inescapable, and magnified by the Emperor's ancient artifice. They are trained to control their unsettling auras, projecting them until it becomes difficult even to look upon them, or suppressing them at need. The Sisters can never truly be rid of their genetic curse. After the War Master's rebellion was halted at Terra, and the Emperor was interred upon his golden throne, the Sisters of Silence found themselves without direction. Many were slain or lost forever, scattered and stranded across a war-ravaged galaxy. Undaunted by the sudden lack of guidance, they went abroad into the wider Imperium to continue their work. There amongst the stars they hunted savants and witches with unstinting fervour. Some as part of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica, some as lone but loyal agents who eventually settled within the teeming hordes of humanity. In some rare cases, these hunters learned to suppress their uncanny auras to some degree, and in living amongst others begot their own bloodlines. None of these would-be settlers ever stayed in one place for long, for the pariah gene is not named idly. Wherever the Sisters of Silence sought out new lives, they were hounded into exile more by those who hated them for their intrinsic otherness. Still, not all were reviled or burned as witches. The offspring of these few had children of their own, and over the generations the genetic peculiarity of the Silent Sisterhood found its way further into the vast spread of the human race. The Sisters of Silence have banded together but rarely since their devolution at the end of the Horus Heresy, with each major instance of their gathering for war expunged from imperial records. Even then, their various orders remained divided by necessity, gathering only in secret. In the years since, their numbers have grown, gradually but steadily, into the tens of thousands. Now the Sisterhood is a vast army of psychic nulls, standing ready to extinguish the dark flames of chaos that threaten to consume the Imperium. To hurl back the darkness. Through a portion of the Silent Sisterhood still garrison the Black Ships, many more have answered the call to war. With warp storms ravaging the Imperium and the demon Primarchs walking the worlds of the material universe once more, the moment has come for the Silent Sisterhood to change the course of history. They will not be found wanting. Those in whom the pariah gene makes itself fully manifest, sometimes known as untouchables, are still highly prized by the Adeptus Astra Telepathica. Often they are sought out at great length and considerable expense. Once they have been secured, they are taken by the Black Ships and returned to Holy Terror. Most perish during the stringent loyalty tests and punishing physical regimes they must endure as part of their training. Some, should they be judged fit for it, are taken to the fortress of the Officio Assassinorum, where they are trained and transformed into the soulless horrors known as Culexus Assassins. Others become soul guardians within the Emperor's palace. Despite the intensity of their trials, a significant number of these female pariahs have the sheer fortitude to make it into the Silent Sisterhood. It was Reboot Guilliman himself who, upon his return, ordered the remnants of the Silent Sisterhood located and reinstated to the Imperial fold. With more and more incidences of psychic activity and increasingly violent warp storms dividing the Imperium, humanity had greater need of the Sisters of Silence than ever. No longer centralized within the vast spires of Luna, the Sisterhood has established a presence in every segmentum, forming many orders and offshoots. Some are charged with specific duties, such as infiltrating the hyperspatial tunnels of the webway to stymie the plans of psychic Xenos races, recovering pariahs from enemy forces that seek to use them for their own gain, or neutralizing spectral attacks in strategically vital locations. Others have carte blanche to pursue their own agendas, provided they culminate in the destruction of the great enemy's forces. If there is any quality these genetic deviants share in abundance, it is self-reliance. The Sisters of Silence have been largely fleet-based since the reconvening of their orders. They have long-standing pacts with veteran astropaths and navigator houses that are better able to endure their presence on interstellar voyages. Under Guilliman's instruction, they have been instrumental in navigating the turbulent warp storms that tear through the galaxy, gathering in large numbers to project a null field capable of repelling the Imperium itself. This approach is still dangerous, however. The effect of the pariah gene is exponential and can cripple a war effort through unintended fear, confusion, and astropathic malfunction if used poorly. But the Sisters' efficacy cannot be denied, even by those who abhor them. They can becalm eldritch storms and cast back demon invasions with only the force of their presence. When the Silent Sisterhood take to the field in conventional warfare, they take commands from none outside their order. They answer only to the ultimate power of the Golden Throne. Fully ordained sisters communicate only via thought mark, dealing with others via interlocutors from the sisterhood's lower echelons. Each such exchange is still fraught, for the would-be allies of the Order cannot help but feel the shadow of the Null Maidens upon their souls. When these lithe warriors come close to humans, such as the soldiers of the Astra Militarum, even stoic warriors find cold sweat prickling their skin, eyes itching and stomachs churning. The touch of a sister of silence, should it ever be felt skin to skin, is enough to make a man convulse with repulsion. Space Marines grimly endure their presence, aware that they stand in the presence of the Emperor's own elite. The Grey Knights are the exception. Relying on psychic warfare as they do, they cannot bear the company of the Silent Sisterhood, and are content to watch them from afar. To a demon hunter, the power to send a warp fiend shrieking back in horror merely by advancing upon it is impressive indeed. The weapons of the Silent Sisterhood are trusted mainstays of the Imperial arsenal. Their gleaming gunships and transports are much like those of the Adeptus Astartes, for it is imperative the Sisters of Silence strike fast and hard, then withdraw to fight again. A force so small in number has no other option if it wishes to make its mark upon a hostile universe. The most trusted weapons are the bolter, the flamer, and the sword. They tend to use these in overlapping wave assaults. First, prosecutor squads unleash a deafening, flesh-shredding hail of bolt shots. Then, their Witchseeker sisters incinerate those who skulk in cover to escape retribution. Should an adversary prove tough enough to survive this double salvo of firepower, melee specialist vigilators will dart forward with gleaming powered great blades, their immaculate sword form seeing enemy heads fly from necks as they slash, cut, and slay. The sisters have more esoteric methods for hunting foes whose sorceress abilities make them proof against physical harm. Psych-out grenades, for instance, contain the ground-down ashes of cremated martyrs from the ranks of the sisters, bodily remains that have lost none of their potency as weapons of nullification. The foe reels after each detonation, as the Sisterhood close in to deal the final blow. In many ways, the Sisterhood stand guard over humanity's psychic evolution. Truly, these women are death incarnate to those who believe that their unnatural powers make them gods amongst men. The talons of the Emperor are always ready to tear such fools down from their pedestals. End quote. And so, we have heard the very basics of the Sisters of Silence. For a time, they were not in favour at GW, Games Workshop, and it was thought that they may be allowed to slip into the past to remain a curio of the Crusade and Heresy eras. But not so. For GW have been revisiting a lot of old strands of plot and digging up real gems from their own past. Thus it was with the Sisters of Silence. They thundered back onto the tabletop and jostled their way back into the forefront of the lore, playing a fundamental part of the post-Indomitus Crusade era. But to view a Sister of Silence must be an unsettling thing that few can truly understand. Perhaps the closest any of us will get is to see an android, as they are becoming more and more realistic, one appearing on chat shows only recently. To be honest, when I looked into its synthetic eyes, crafted so meticulously to reflect our own, I felt a multitude of feelings. Pride at the sheer skill of those who had built it, the massive civilization we have built to support such specialisms and specialists. Curiosity at what it would do and how it would develop, but also fear. That cold, sinking feeling when all the hairs on your body stand on end and you feel like someone is not walking, but tap dancing on your grave. Like you are seeing the future, and it will not have any place for you or your like. Soulless. To stare into the eyes of a null is a harrowing experience, for they are mutants and not truly human any longer, despite their visage and gait being so similar. For in Warhammer 40k, souls are very real and very delicious, bright qualities. Thus it is a very strange feeling, a feeling of seeing something wrong, something that should not exist. A being without a soul is the only way it can be described, and it is terrifying. So to see one Sister of Silence is a thing of dread. To see formations of them is a thing of nightmares. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. We shall end this entry there, but I hope to revisit the Sisters of Silence and go more into them at a future point. Also, we will get a fuller explanation of psychic nulls in the very near future. I look forward to it intensely, and hope you will join me then. If you have enjoyed this brief introduction to the Sisters of Silence, then please consider liking and subscribing. If you do, then please also hit the notifications option. I would not want you to miss out. If you are a regular gentle listener and see the worth in what we are doing, then please do consider also supporting us on Patreon. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make time for fun. Toodaloo.